Hello, friends. Welcome into the Cowboys Report. I am your host, Tom Downey. We've got some drafts, some free agency, and some trade rumors to dive into. But before we do, I want to start with Dak Prescott. The franchise tag number has been made official by the NFL for Dak Prescott. It is a little bit above what was the previously reported number, ends up being $31.409 million. The Cowboys were aware and had planned for that jump. Things got a little confusing because, well, players like Big Ben restructured their deals, which could have impacted the franchise tag number. In the end, though, it does come in just above that $31 million price tag, which does have an impact, by the way, on future franchise tags for Dak Prescott if the Cowboys choose to pursue that route. This year, it's 31.409. Next year, it's either a higher number or 120% of his previous figure, which is probably the number it's going to end up being. So it checks in it is north of 37.6 million, 37.691 to be exact. Then in 2022, it becomes 144% of the 2021 figure. They're not going to tag him that year. If they were, it'd be 54 plus million. The number to keep in mind, the 2-year franchise tag average, 34.55 million. That's significant. That could look a little bit like your baseline if you're Dak Prescott looking for his extension figure. You can just get tagged twice and make that on average over the next 2 years. Things get wild in 2021, so don't pay too much attention to that 3-year figure, but I did want to at least include it. Now, before we dive into the rumors, I want you guys to do me a favor and double check that your notifications are actually turned on. Only 22.8% of you do. A lot of you guys have them on personalized, which means you might end up missing out on videos here. So click that little notification bell on the video. Double check that is on all and not personalized. We're going to talk about some free agents today. Been a little bit since we've dove into those. About Marqise Lee and the Cowboys. Normally, I say, no, guys, don't get your hopes up. This one, though, I am at least somewhat intrigued by. I'll give it 2 stars. I'm not going to guarantee anything. And the draft will, of course, have a significant impact on what ends up happening here. But I would have some level of interest. Marqise Lee was a former early round pick, round 2 if I'm remembering correctly here on the fly, was cut by the Jaguars on Monday. Now, he's mostly been an outside wide receiver, but there are some slot reps for Lee, and I think he could handle that role for the Cowboys. The issue here, and this is why, despite what your report said, it was not a surprise cut, he's barely gotten on the field the past 2 years. Didn't play at all in 2018. Played like 66 snaps in all of 2019 with 3 catches. He hasn't been an impact player because he hasn't been on the field at all over the past 2 seasons. But maybe that means you can get him cheap. And as I've said before, folks, there is nothing wrong with a cheap 1-year deal with little to no guarantee money, because purely from a historical production standpoint and assuming that Marqise could come back and be a little bit healthier, he's better than Devin Smith or Cedric Wilson, your top 2 contenders right now for that wide receiver 3 role for the Cowboys. But the draft will have a big impact here. I am open and really almost in favor of the idea of Dallas drafting somebody and then signing someone like a Marqise Lee as well. I think that makes some sense for the Dallas Cowboys. Address it with 2 different routes. So should the Cowboys sign Marqise Lee? I want you guys to let me know what you think in the comment section. Y for yes, N for no. You could draft a receiver and sign Marqise Lee as well. That actually might end up being a pretty good idea. I'll make this the pinned comment of today's video. So you can scroll on down there if you get the ad break here and cast your votes. Y for yes or N for no. Back once again, some Jamal Adams trade rumors. These ones just never, ever seem to go away. The Jets GM, Douglas, chimed in. We're going to stick with 2 stars, although, again, maybe don't get your hopes up for a during draft trade. Might make a little bit more sense, after the draft or before the season begins. The Jets GM, Joe Douglas, said that his plan is to keep Jamal Adams, but, and it was kind of a big but, They will listen if teams call about a possible trade, which is exactly what the GM is supposed to do, although maybe you don't say it about your best player. They also said the team does plan extension talks after the NFL draft. Of course, that isn't necessarily what Jamal Adams wants to hear. If he were to be available, you best believe the Cowboys would be among the teams in after him because of the interest they've shown in the past, specifically at the NFL trade deadline. So if there is a draft trade, this is about what I think it would cost. This is more than what the Cowboys offered at the trade deadline, but it is less, kind of significantly so, than what the Jets wanted at the trade deadline. So I tried to meet somewhere in the middle. Cowboys, of course, get Jamal Adams. The Jets get 17, a future second, and I'll throw in Xavier Woods as well, and maybe you could keep that second-round pick if you included Woods, but that's what negotiations are for. So that was my trade package, but I want to hear from you. What would you trade for Jamal Adams if you were the Cowboys? It doesn't have to be an offer the Jets accept, but I want to know how you value him and what you would be willing to give up if you were the Dallas Cowboys. Now, today's show, I got a deal as well. Cowboys jerseys, once again on sale. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. 25% off right now if you head to chatsports.com/Cowboys jersey. There's a big promo code. You can't miss it. It'll probably automatically be applied as well. 25% off Cowboys jerseys. Zeke, heck, they still got some Dez ones on there if you happen to be convinced that Dez is going to come back to the Dallas Cowboys. It's chatsports.com/Cowboys jersey, 25% off. And as you saw there, a bunch of different colors as well. Let's go back to free agency. Dre Kirkpatrick is next up here. Is there interest on that front? I am inclined to believe this one. I'm going to give it 3 stars, but there is a big but that we'll get into as well. But I think Mike Fisher is right. The Cowboys internally have explored adding Dre Kirkpatrick. That makes sense if you miss on a cornerback in the draft. We'll get to that. Dre Kirkpatrick, this is why he's still unsigned. He doesn't fill any team's number 1 cornerback. He is a stopgap, short-term solution at this point in his career as depth, as a low-end starter. That's what he is right now, which the Cowboys have. They have those guys. They have Awuzie and Lewis and Anthony Brown and maybe Marqise Candidate too. Kirkpatrick hasn't been the same disruptive guy really since 2016. You can see it in his production. It's declined. But he does make sense if the Cowboys can't find a corner early in this year's draft. Because I like the bodies they have right now. Awuzie, Lewis, Brown, Candidate from a depth perspective. None of those guys are number 1 solutions. So if you can't get a receiver in round 1 or round 2 or, God forbid, round 3 either, then I'm picking up the phone and I'm calling Dre Kirkpatrick to try and get more bodies and more options onto this roster and let those top 5 guys compete for the number 1 through number 4 roles. Quite frankly, heck, maybe one ends up getting cut as well. So from Kirkpatrick's perspective, I have interest, but if the Cowboys get a corner in round 1 or in round 2, I don't think it's actually all that likely. So from the interest perspective, yeah, I buy it, but the likelihood perspective, we're not going to have a good feel for that until after the NFL draft. Speaking of the draft, will the Cowboys go linebacker in round 1? This is my nightmare scenario. And even though it's a nightmare, I don't think it happens. I won't rule it out altogether. Specifically, a trade down might make a little bit more sense. But just the 1 star here, that's what Stephen Jones said. That's what Brian Broaddus has said. I am inclined to believe both of them, even though, to be fair, it is smoke screens. I do think the Cowboys like Kenneth Murray. I don't think that many teams dislike Kenneth Murray. But linebacker's not a need. Stephen Jones agrees. He's what he said recently. That'd be news for me in terms of a heightened need for the linebacker position. Now, you could explore some depth at linebacker. I don't have a whole lot of interest or disagreement on that front there. And you could like Kenneth Murray as well. I just don't think it makes any sense for this organization to target a linebacker in round 1. Where you sit right now, you've got Sean Lee, Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch, Joe Thomas as your top 4. In today's NFL that uses 2 linebackers 60 to 70% of the time, 4 is what you need. Now, where things could get a little bit interesting depends on A, if you're terrified of LVE's neck issues. That's fair, but I don't think the Cowboys are quite that way. If they do take a linebacker, that means LVE's neck is messed up, I think. What has been proposed before, and I don't hate it, is moving to a 3-4 scheme. The Cowboys have said that the base defense will not be 3-4, it'll be 4-3. But regardless, they will be more multiple. You will see some different looks from the Cowboys in terms of how many defensive linemen are used. And if you move to a 3-4 core, maybe you could make Jalen Smith into a full-time edge. I don't love that idea. I think you're better off letting him blitz, but not be a true edge rusher in that 3-4 in terms of that linebacker depth chart. And even if you do move to a 3-4, well, guess what? You're still only using 2 linebackers. So unless you think LV's neck is messed up forever, the Cowboys have said it's not, so maybe they're lying, or you want to move Jalen to a full-time edge rusher spot, I don't think that's the best use of his abilities. I would rather have him just be a blitzer than a full edge guy. Then it does not make sense to me. So with all that in mind, what will be the Cowboys' base defense? 3-4 or 4-3? I'm talking about this year, by the way. I wouldn't be that surprised if down the road the Cowboys use more of a 3-4 base, but I think for 2020, 4-3 will be that base defense, but base can be a bit of a misnomer here, guys. They're going to be multiple. You will see some 3-4 looks out of this team in 2020. I just choose to believe McCarthy when he says we're going to be a 4-3 base team. Now, the NFL Draft will be live on Chat Sports every single round, every single pick, grades, reaction analysis, all of it. So come watch it with us. YouTube.com/chatsportstv. I'll give you a link in the description of this video in the comments as well, by the way. We're not going anywhere for the entirety of the draft. We're not going to sign off midway through day 3 or not talk about the players picked. No, we've got you guys covered for every single selection. You will enjoy watching the draft on Chat Sports more than anywhere else. And speaking of the draft, how about the Cowboys trading down? I'm going to give this one 2 stars. I think it is possible, and if I actually kind of like the idea, quite frankly, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. Now, Mike Fisher's thrown out there as an idea, specifically if top targets like C.J. Henderson and Kayvon Chasen are gone. If that happens, I am all aboard trying to trade down. But I do want to make this note. You are not guaranteed to be able to trade down. It might not happen. You might get horrible offers back, really bad offers, and maybe you don't want to do that. Or, heck, if you're trying to trade down, you're probably not the only team looking to move down in the draft. There might not be that many teams interested. But Fisher had a pretty intriguing idea that I wanted to discuss here about getting 2 first-round picks this year. You take 17, you send it to Seattle for number 27 and a second-round pick. Now, from the trade value chart, that works. That's actually pretty much exact value, and it would be what it would cost for Seattle to move up. Of course, it requires Seattle, a team that historically doesn't like moving up first to move down, to pull the trigger. Then what you could do is you could pick at 27. Now you've got your own second-round pick, 51 overall, and you've got number 64. You could move up with the Ravens and have back-to-back late first-round picks. That's intriguing to me. I don't hate that idea. But again, I want to emphasize this. Trades require 2 teams to want to do it. Maybe Seattle doesn't want to move up that far. Maybe the Ravens don't want to move down that far. Those are the discussions that you have in terms of trading or not, or picking at 17. So let's say you do have an interested party, which is, of course, the biggest part involved there. Which would you rather do? Pick at 17 or trade down? Type P for pick, T for trade. It's pretty easy for me. I think that the value of the guys you're going to have at 17 versus even 27, I think it's pretty similar. So if I can get the proper trade value, I'm trading down almost every single time. All right, one last trade idea that I hate on today's show. Billy Price, how about trading for him? How about no? I don't want him. This is fake news. Bleacher Report's got one trade every team should make during the draft, and they said the Cowboys should trade for Billy Price. Now, Billy Price was a first-round pick, so that does satisfy the Will McClay special theory that I like to have. The problem is that this trade package for Price sucks. The Bengals get number 82 overall, and the Cowboys get Price, and a 5th-round pick that's barely top 150. In terms of how that values Price in a trade, it values him as a top 90 pick. That 5th-round pick helps you move up a couple spots in round 3. That's the value for Billy Price. Here's the thing. He ain't worth that at all. He was terrible. He's been terrible for the Bengals. He's not been a good offense. He's been benched twice at center and guard. You know why the Bengals signed Xavier Su'a-Filo? Because they want to play him over Billy Price. He's not better than Joe Looney right now. He's not better than Connor McGovern. I don't believe they haven't even seen McGovern. He's certainly not better than Connor Williams. Williams has been 10x the player. So from the Cowboys' perspective, yeah, you get a change of scenery. Maybe that's what Price needs right now. Why would I trade a 3rd-round pick for him? Maybe a day 3 pick. Anything more than that? Absolutely not. That'd be a horrible trade by the Dallas Cowboys. Hey, Cowboys fans, thanks for watching the Cowboys Report. If you haven't already, click right here to subscribe to our channel for all the best Cowboys coverage on the internet. That's news, rumors, highlights, mailbags, film studies, and a whole lot more. And I'm making your lives a little bit easier as well with the next Cowboys Report video right here.